Dr. Sarah Chen pulled her coffee mug closer to her chest as she stared at the computer screen. The numbers dancing across the monitor made no sense. She had been working at the radio telescope facility for 12 years, and she had never seen anything like this. The night shift was usually quiet. Most people thought listening for signals from space was boring work. Sarah knew better. Every night brought new mysteries from the stars. Radio waves from distant galaxies, pulses from spinning neutron stars, and the constant whisper of cosmic. Background radiation filled her headphones. But tonight was different. "Computer, run the analysis again," she said to the machine. The artificial intelligence voice responded in its calm tone. "Analysis complete. Signal shows intelligent design patterns. Source unknown. Direction not toward Earth." Sarah sat up straighter in her chair. She had found something that was not meant for human ears. The signal had appeared 3 hours ago, during her routine scan of the Vega sector. At first, she thought it was interference from a satellite, but the pattern was too complex, too organized. It pulsed in mathematical sequences that suggested meaning. The signal was weak, barely above the background noise of space, but it was definitely artificial. She called her supervisor, Dr. James Park, even though it was past midnight. "Sarah, this better be important," came his sleepy voice through the phone. "Jim, I think we have something. A signal. It looks like a transmission between 2 points in space, and we just happened to catch it." There was silence on the other end, then the sound of Dr. Park getting out of bed. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't touch anything." While she waited, Sarah studied the signal more carefully. The transmission was not random. It had structure, like language. Parts of it repeated, suggesting important information. Other sections showed mathematical constants that any intelligent species would recognize. The number pi appeared several times, along with prime number sequences. But what worried Sarah most was the tone of the signal. Even without understanding the language, she could sense urgency in the transmission patterns. The signal repeated the same information over and over, like someone shouting for help. Dr. Park arrived with 2 other scientists from the project. Dr. Lisa Martinez was their linguistics expert, and Dr. Raj Patel specialized in signal analysis. They gathered around Sarah's workstation as she played the recording. "How long has it been transmitting?" Dr. Martinez asked. "About 3 hours of active signal. But look at this." Sarah pointed to another part of her screen. "The computer detected traces of the same signal pattern in our archived data. It's been going on for weeks, maybe months. We just never noticed because it was so weak." Dr. Patel studied the frequency analysis. "This is definitely not from Earth. The carrier wave shows characteristics that our technology doesn't produce. And the power source." He paused, running calculations. "The amount of energy needed to send this signal across interstellar distances is enormous. Whatever is sending this message is using technology we can barely imagine." The team worked through the night, trying to understand what they had found. As the hours passed, the signal grew weaker. By dawn, it had faded to almost nothing. "It's stopping," Sarah said, watching the strength indicators drop. Dr. Martinez looked at the data. "Not stopping, moving. The source is in motion and it's moving away from us. We're losing the signal because of distance and orbital mechanics. They had captured 17 hours of transmission before it faded completely." The team spent the next day analyzing every second of the recording. What they found changed everything. The signal contained 3 distinct types of information. The first part was mathematical, universal constants and geometric proofs that any technological civilization would understand. This was clearly meant to establish intelligence and provide a translation key. The second part was more complex. It appeared to be coordinate data, describing locations in 3-dimensional space using the galaxy's center as a reference point. Dr. Patel's calculations showed that the coordinates pointed to star systems hundreds of light years away. The third part was the most mysterious. It consisted of complex waveforms that suggested emotional content, what Dr. Martinez called linguistic music. The patterns rose and fell like speech, but with harmonics that human voices could never produce. "It's definitely a message from one intelligent species to another," Dr. Martinez explained to the growing team of experts who had joined the project. "But here's what's strange. The signal was sent on a very narrow beam, precisely aimed at one of those coordinate locations. We only detected it because our radio telescope happened to be in the path of the beam at exactly the right moment." Dr. Park leaned back in his chair. "So we accidentally intercepted someone else's mail." "More than that," Sarah said, pointing to the signal analysis. "Look at the power output and the repetition patterns. This isn't casual communication. This is an emergency broadcast." The implications hit the team like a cold wave. They had intercepted a distress call that was never meant for human ears. Somewhere in the galaxy, an intelligent species was in trouble, sending desperate messages to distant locations. Word of the discovery spread quickly through the scientific community. Within a week, teams from around the world were working to decode the message. The world's most advanced computers and artificial intelligence systems joined the effort. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a xenobiology expert from the European Space Agency, flew in to join the team. "If this is really an alien distress call, we need to understand everything we can about who sent it and what kind of trouble they're in." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Martinez's 12-year-old daughter, Maria, was visiting the facility for a school project. While the adults worked on complex linguistic algorithms, Maria noticed something simpler. "Mom, why? Do some parts of the signal sound sad?" Dr. Martinez paused her work. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Listen to this part." Maria pointed to a section of the recording. "It sounds like crying. And this part sounds angry. And this part—" She played another section. "This part sounds like saying goodbye." The emotional content in the signal became the key to understanding its meaning. The aliens were not just sending coordinates and mathematical data. They were sending feelings: fear, desperation, love, and loss. Working with this insight, the team began to decode the message piece by piece. The mathematical section established basic concepts. The coordinate data showed specific locations, but the emotional content told a story that chilled everyone who heard it. The signal was a warning. An advanced species was telling their distant colonies that danger was coming. The mathematical sections included countdown timers and velocity calculations. The coordinate data showed the location of the threat and the path it would take. The emotional content carried messages from families who knew they would never see each other again. "They're dying," Dr. Martinez said quietly as the team reviewed their translation. "Whoever sent this message, their world is ending. They're warning their colonies that the same threat is coming for them." Sarah stared at the data scrolling across her screen. In the cold mathematics and alien harmonics, she could see the final moments of a civilization. A species that had achieved interstellar communication was facing extinction, and their last act was to warn others of their kind. "How long do they have?" Dr. Park asked. Dr. Patel ran the calculations based on the velocity data in the message. "If we're reading this correctly, whatever threat destroyed the message senders will reach the colony locations in approximately 7 Earth years." The room fell silent. Somewhere in the galaxy, innocent beings were living their lives, unaware that death was racing toward them through the void. They might never receive the warning that their homeworld had died trying to send. Dr. Vasquez spoke first. "We have to do something." "Like what?" Dr. Park asked. "We don't even know where these colonies are exactly, and even if we did, our fastest ships would take hundreds of years to reach them." "But we know someone is out there," Sarah said. "We know they're in danger. We can't just ignore this." The debate that started in that small control room would soon spread around the world. Humanity had accidentally overheard the death cry of an alien civilization. The message was never meant to be heard by human ears, but now that they had heard it, what was their responsibility? As news of the discovery leaked to the media, people everywhere asked the same questions. Should humanity try to help beings they had never met? Could they even help? And what would happen if they tried? The intercepted message had opened a door that could never be closed. Humanity now knew they were not alone in the universe. They also knew that the galaxy could be a dangerous place, where entire civilizations could be erased without warning. In the days that followed, as governments and scientists debated what to do, Sarah often returned to listen to the original recording. In the alien harmonics and mathematical precision, she heard something that transcended species and distance, the universal language of hope and desperation. Someone had reached across the void to warn others of danger. Now humanity faced a choice that would define their species forever. They had heard the message that was never meant for them. The question was, what would they do about it? The signal from space had stopped, but its impact on humanity was just beginning. In radio telescopes around the world, scientists continued to search for more transmissions, hoping to learn more about the species that had trusted the universe with their final words. And in the growing team of experts working to decode every nuance of the message, a new understanding was emerging. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but it was also full of intelligence and compassion. The dying aliens had used their last moments, not for revenge or despair, but to protect others. It was a lesson that humanity would need to remember in the difficult days ahead. The emergency meeting at the United Nations building in New York brought together the brightest minds from every continent. For 3 weeks, teams of linguists, mathematicians, and computer scientists had worked around the clock to decode the alien message. What they had discovered made the room feel heavy with sorrow. Dr. Martinez stood at the front of the assembly hall, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to reveal. Behind her, massive screens showed the decoded sections of the transmission. Ladies and gentlemen, we now understand what we intercepted. The message comes from a species that calls themselves the HFY. Based on the mathematical references in their communication, they are an aquatic species from a water world approximately 400 light-years from Earth. She clicked to the next slide, showing a star map with marked locations. The HFY had established colonies on 3 different worlds. The message we intercepted was sent from their homeworld to these colonies. It was their final transmission. Murmurs filled the room as the translation appeared on screen. The words were simple, but their meaning was devastating. To our children among the distant stars, our world dies today. The devourers have found us. We have 7 cycles to prepare you for what comes. We send you our knowledge, our love, and our warning. Do not mourn us. Live. Dr. Park took over the presentation. The beings they call devourers are what we believe to be a silicon-based life form. According to the data in the message, they travel from system to system, consuming all organic matter on inhabited worlds. They are not interested in conquest or communication. They simply harvest entire biospheres. The room grew quieter as the implications sank in. An entire species had been wiped out by creatures that saw them as nothing more than food. The mathematical data in the message gives us more details, continued Dr. Park. The devourers travel in large fleets. They strip mine planets for resources, then move on to the next system. The HFY homeworld fought them for several months before falling. The final battle lasted 3 days. Dr. Chen Sarah raised her hand to speak. The most heartbreaking part of the message is the personal content. The HFY included what can only be described as family messages in their transmission. The screen changed to show translated text that made many people in the room wipe their eyes. From weaver of currents to small swimmer in distant waters, your first spawning brings joy even in our darkest hour. Know that your offspring carry the song of our people to new seas. Swim well, my child. From the deep thinkers of the northern depths to the colony builders, We have solved the problem of the coral sickness that troubled your reefs. The formula is embedded in mathematical sequence 47b. May your waters always be clear. From all who remain to all who are distant, remember the singing tide ceremony. Remember the taste of home kelp. Remember that the ocean connects all life. We are with you in the current. Dr. Martinez had to pause before continuing. There are hundreds of these personal messages. Parents to children, teachers to students, friends to friends. They knew they were going to die, but they used their final transmission to send love and practical help to their colonies. The Chinese representative spoke first. How much time do the colonies have? Dr. Patel consulted his calculations. Based on the velocity and trajectory data in the message, the Devourer fleet will reach the first SCI-FI colony in approximately 7 Earth years. The other 2 colonies will be attacked within the following 2 years. Do the colonies know what's coming? Asked the Brazilian delegate. That's the tragedy, Dr. Martinez replied. We've been monitoring radio frequencies from the direction of the colony worlds. We've detected some signals that match SCI-FI communication patterns, but they're very weak. We don't think the colonies ever received the warning message. The homeworld was destroyed before the transmission could be completed and repeated. The Russian representative leaned forward. So we're the only ones who know that 3 entire worlds are about to be destroyed. Yes, said Dr. Park simply. The room erupted in discussion. Some delegates argued that humanity had no business interfering in alien affairs. Others insisted that having the knowledge created a moral obligation to act. The debate continued for hours. Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had become the project's coordinator, finally called for quiet. Let me share something else we've learned about the SCI-FI. Their technology level appears to be similar to ours, but focused in different areas. They have advanced biological sciences and energy manipulation, but their space travel seems limited to their local system. She showed new slides with technical data. The message includes detailed information about their society. The SCI-FI are what we would call pacifists. They have no weapons of war, no military structure. Their entire civilization is based on harmony with their environment. They're scientists, artists, and philosophers. What about the Devourers? Asked the Indian delegate. What do we know about their capabilities? Dr. Patel's expression grew grim. From the SCI-FI data, we can estimate that a Devourer fleet consists of at least 50 large vessels, each the size of a small city. They use some form of matter conversion technology to break down planets at the molecular level. Their ships appear to be living organisms themselves, possibly silicon-based, life forms that have evolved to travel through space. Could humanity fight them? Someone asked. General Patricia Williams, the head of the newly formed Space Defense Initiative, spoke for the first time. Based on the technical data in the alien message, a direct confrontation would be suicide. The Devourers destroyed an entire civilization that had thousands of years to prepare for space travel. Humanity has been in space for less than 100 years. But, she continued, that doesn't mean we're helpless. The SCI-FI were pacifists who had never fought a war. Humanity has different strengths. Dr. Martinez clicked to a new section of the decoded message. There's something else. The SCI-FI included cultural and scientific databases in their transmission. They literally tried to preserve their entire civilization in that final message. We now have access to 4,000 years of alien science, art, and philosophy. The implications were staggering. The dying SCI-FI had given humanity the greatest gift imaginable, the complete knowledge of an advanced alien civilization. Their biological sciences are centuries ahead of ours, Dr. Vasquez explained. They had mastered genetic engineering, ecosystem management, and what they call life shaping, the ability to modify living organisms for specific purposes. Their energy technology is based on principles we're just beginning to understand. Why are you telling us this? Asked the German representative. Because knowledge means responsibility. Dr. Martinez replied. The SCI-FI trusted the universe with their legacy. They sent everything they were into the void, hoping someone would find it and remember them. We found it. We are the keepers of their memory now. The French delegate raised an important question. Is there any indication that the devourers might threaten Earth? Dr. Park nodded grimly. The trajectory data suggests they move through the galaxy in a spiral pattern, consuming systems as they go. At their current rate of expansion, they would reach Earth's region of the galaxy in approximately 200 years. The room fell silent again. The alien threat was not just about distant beings humanity had never met. Eventually, it would become humanity's problem, too. So we have a choice, General Williams said. We can wait 200 years and hope we're strong enough to fight the devourers when they come for us. Or we can try to stop them now, while they're still far away. Dr. Chen Sarah stood up. There's a third option. We can try to warn the SCI-FI colonies and help them escape. Escape to where? Asked the Japanese representative. Here, Dr. Chen replied. Earth is in the opposite direction from the devourer. Advance. If we could contact the colonies and offer them refuge, we could save what's left of their species. The debate that followed would continue for weeks, but already public opinion around the world was forming. The story of the SCI-FI had captured human imagination. Here was a peaceful, intelligent species facing extinction, their final act one of love and warning to their distant children. Protest movements sprang up in major cities demanding that humanity act to save the alien colonies. Scientists worked overtime to develop technologies that might help. Engineers designed new spacecraft. Military planners studied the data about devourer tactics. But it was the personal messages in the SCI-FI transmission that moved people most. The alien words of love, hope, and farewell resonated across all human cultures. Parents holding their children thought of SCI-FI families separated by death and distance. Teachers reading the alien knowledge gifts thought of SCI-FI educators who had spent their final hours preparing lessons for students they would never see again. Dr. Martinez found herself listening to one particular message over and over again. It was from an individual called Current Singer to someone named Wave Rider. My beloved, I know you are building new reefs on the second world. I wish I could see the corals you have shaped, taste the waters you have purified. The younglings here ask about you every day. I tell them you swim in distant seas, but your heart current flows back to us always. When the dark time comes, remember that love travels faster than light, faster than death. In every wave, I am with you. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. The SCI-FI faced extinction with grace, thinking not of themselves but of those they loved. They had given their final transmission not to seeking revenge or cursing their fate, but to sending knowledge and love across the void. As the weeks passed and the decoded message revealed more details about SCI-FI civilization, humanity began to understand what would be lost if the colonies fell to the devourers. An entire way of thinking about the universe, a philosophy based on harmony and connection, would disappear forever. The SCI-FI saw all life as part of a vast current that flowed through time and space. They believed that every action created ripples that touched distant shores. Their science was based on cooperation rather than conquest, their art on celebration rather than domination. They were, in many ways, what humanity might become if they chose wisdom over war, harmony over hatred. The message that was never meant to be heard had become a mirror, showing humanity both the beauty that existed in the universe and the terrible forces that threatened to destroy it. The question was no longer whether humanity should act, but whether they could act in time. In laboratories around the world, scientists worked to understand SCI-FI technology. In shipyards, engineers began building vessels designed for interstellar travel. In military academies, strategists studied the data about devourer tactics, looking for weaknesses. And in radio telescopes pointing toward distant stars, operators listened for any sign that the SCI-FI colonies still lived, still sent their harmonious signals into the void, unaware that death was racing toward them through the darkness. The clock was ticking. 7 years to cross impossible distances, make contact with beings humanity had never seen, and find a way to fight an enemy that had already destroyed one advanced civilization. The SCI-FI message had changed everything. Now it remained to be seen if humanity could change the ending of their story. The global assembly hall buzzed with tension as representatives from every nation on Earth gathered for the most important vote in human history. 6 months had passed since the world learned about the SCI-FI message, and humanity remained, divided about what to do. President Katherine Morrison of the United States stood at the podium, her voice carrying the weight of the decision before them. "We are here to decide whether humanity will attempt to intervene in an alien conflict. The choice we make today will define our species for generations to come." In the gallery above, Dr. Sarah Chen watched with millions of others around the world. The past months had been a whirlwind of scientific discoveries, political debates, and public demonstrations. Everyone had an opinion about humanity's responsibility to the dying SCI-FI colonies. The debate had split along predictable lines. Some nations argued that Earth's resources should be focused on earthly problems: poverty, climate change, and the ongoing conflicts that plagued humanity. Why risk everything for aliens they had never met? Others insisted that the knowledge of the SCI-FI's fate created a moral obligation to act. How could humanity call itself civilized if it ignored genocide happening in front of their eyes? Admiral Marcus Torres, the newly appointed head of the United Earth Defense Fleet, presented the military perspective. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have spent 6 months analyzing the data from the SCI-FI transmission. Our conclusions are sobering." He gestured to a holographic display showing the galaxy. "The Devourer fleet is massive. Our best estimates suggest 50 to 70 vessels, each capable of planetary destruction. The SCI-FI homeworld had orbital defenses and energy shields that we can only dream of building. The Devourers destroyed it all in 3 days." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The technical briefings had painted a grim picture of humanity's chances in a direct confrontation. "However," Admiral Torres continued, "we have advantages the SCI-FI did not. They were pacifists who had never fought a war. Humanity has unfortunately had plenty of practice with conflict. We understand tactics, strategy, and the element of surprise." Dr. James Park took the stage next, representing the scientific community. "The SCI-FI database has revolutionized our understanding of advanced technology. In 6 months, we have made leaps in energy physics, biological sciences, and space propulsion that would have taken us decades to achieve alone." He showed slides of new technologies being developed around the world. Fusion drives that can accelerate, ships to 10% of light speed, energy shields based on SCI-FI principles, biological computers that can process information faster than any artificial intelligence we have ever built. "But," he emphasized, "even with these advances, we cannot match Devourer technology. If we choose to intervene, it will not be a fair fight." The Chinese representative, Ambassador Li Wei, spoke for the opposition. "With respect to our colleagues, we must face reality. The SCI-FI had thousands of years to develop their technology, and they still lost. How can humanity, with less than a century of space experience, hope to succeed where they failed?" He stood and addressed the assembly directly. "Every ship we send to help the aliens is a ship we cannot use to defend Earth. Every soldier we risk in this venture is a protector we lose for our own planet. The SCI-FI message tells us that the Devourers will eventually reach our region of space. Should we not focus on preparing for that inevitability rather than throwing away our forces in a hopeless gesture?" The Indian representative, Dr. Priya Sharma, countered with passion. "Ambassador Li speaks of hopeless gestures, but I see something different. I see an opportunity for humanity to prove that we are more than just another predator species fighting for resources." She gestured to the translated SCI-FI messages displayed around the room. These beings faced extinction with grace and love. Their final act was to warn others and share their knowledge freely. They could have spent their last days seeking revenge or cursing their fate. Instead, they chose to give. Her voice grew stronger. The SCI-FI message was never meant for us, but we heard it anyway. Perhaps that was not an accident. Perhaps the universe is testing us, asking what kind of species we choose to be. President Morrison called for order as applause and shouting erupted from the gallery. The public reaction to the SCI-FI discovery had been overwhelming. Protests, demanding action, filled streets in major cities. Children drew pictures of the aquatic aliens and asked their parents why no one was helping them. Religious leaders spoke of humanity's duty to protect the innocent, regardless of species. The Brazilian representative, Dr. Carlos Santos, offered a compromise. Perhaps we are thinking about this wrong. We speak of military intervention as if it were our only option. But what if we focused on evacuation instead of confrontation? He presented a new proposal that had emerged from the engineering teams. Our latest fusion drives could reach the nearest SCI-FI colony in 4 years if we push the technology to its limits. We could offer to evacuate the colonies to Earth rather than trying to fight the devourers. The idea had merit, but it raised new questions. How many SCI-FI lived in the colonies? Could Earth's ecosystem support an alien species? What if the refugees brought diseases or technologies that proved dangerous? Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as the project's chief coordinator, addressed these concerns. Based on the population data in the message, we estimate approximately 50,000 SCI-FI living across all 3 colonies. While this seems like a large number, it is manageable given Earth's resources. She showed environmental studies that had been conducted. The SCI-FI are aquatic beings who require saltwater environments. Earth's oceans could easily accommodate refugee populations. Their technology is biological rather than industrial, so environmental contamination is unlikely. The session continued for hours as representatives debated every aspect of the proposed mission. The technical challenges were enormous. The moral implications were complex. The political ramifications could reshape international relations on Earth. But throughout the debate, one element remained constant: the haunting beauty of the SCI-FI messages. As translators continued their work, more personal communications were decoded and shared with the world. Dr. Martinez read one of the latest translations to the assembly. From deep wisdom of the ancient currents to the young swimmers of the new tides, do not fear the darkness that comes. In the deepest trenches, life still finds a way to sing. We have taught you to shape reefs and guide currents. Now we teach you the final lesson, that love echoes across any distance, through any darkness. Swim toward the light, always toward the light. The room fell silent. In those alien words, every human could hear the universal language of hope struggling against despair. The Russian representative, Colonel Dmitry Volkov, broke the silence. I have been a soldier for 30 years. I have seen what happens when good people do nothing in the face of evil. The devourers are not just a threat to the SCI-FI. They are a threat to all life in the galaxy. He stood and faced his fellow delegates. We debate the cost of action, but what is the cost of inaction? If we let the colonies die without trying to help, what does that say about humanity? If we ignore genocide when we have the power to stop it, how are we different from the monsters? We claim to fight. His words sparked new discussion. Military representatives from various nations began to outline what a joint mission might look like. The technological challenges were daunting, but not impossible. The logistical requirements were massive, but manageable if the entire world cooperated. General Patricia Williams presented the preliminary mission plan. We would need a fleet of 12 ships, 10 for evacuation and 2 for defense. Construction would require resources from every major spacefaring nation. The mission would cost approximately $200 billion and require the cooperation of every space agency on Earth. The number was staggering, but not impossible. The world had spent similar amounts on military conflicts that accomplished far less. "The timeline is tight," she continued. "We have 7 years before the Devourers reach the first colony. Building the fleet will take 3 years. The journey will take 4 years. This leaves no room for error and no time for delays." As the debate continued, reports came in from around the world about public reaction. In Tokyo, students had organized a Swim for the Stars movement, raising money for the rescue mission. In London, engineers worked volunteer hours to design new ship components. In São Paulo, musicians composed symphonies based on HFY harmonic patterns. The alien message had touched something deep in human nature, the desire to help others, even at great personal cost. Dr. Sarah Chen was called to testify about the signal detection. As she stood before the assembly, she thought about that night 6 months ago when she first heard the alien transmission. "You ask me why humanity should risk everything for beings we have never met," she said. "I can only tell you what I felt when I first heard their message. In those alien harmonics, I heard something familiar, the sound of intelligent beings who loved their families and wanted to protect them." She paused, looking around the room. The HFY could have spent their final transmission on anger or despair. Instead, they chose to send love and knowledge into the void, hoping someone would care enough to listen. Well, someone did listen. We listened. And now we have to decide what kind of species we are. The vote was scheduled for the next day, but the outcome was already becoming clear. Public pressure, moral arguments, and the simple human desire to help others in need had begun to override practical concerns about cost and risk. That evening, as delegates prepared for the final vote, Dr. Martinez received word that her team had decoded another section of the HFY message. This one was different from the others. Not a personal communication or technical data, but something that seemed to be addressed to the universe itself. "To any who hear this message in the distant tomorrow, we do not know who you are or where. You swim, but we trust that intelligence breeds compassion across any distance. If you can help our children, please do. If you cannot, please remember us. In all the vast ocean of space, let there be some small current that carries our memory to distant shores." When Dr. Martinez shared this message with the assembly, the next morning the debate effectively ended. Here was a species that had trusted the universe with their final hope, asking not for vengeance but for kindness, not for conquest but for compassion. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would attempt to rescue the HFY colonies. The message that was never meant to be heard had become humanity's call to action. In the years that followed, that decision would test everything humans believed, about themselves, about courage, and about what it meant to be truly civilized. But on that day, as representatives from every nation on Earth voted to risk everything for beings they had never met, humanity took its first real step toward becoming the species the HFY had trusted them to be. The real work was just beginning. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, watching the blue-green world of HFY grow larger on the main screen. 4 years of travel through the void, and they had finally arrived at the first HFY colony world. Her heart pounded as she realized she was about to make first contact with an alien species. "Captain, we're receiving signals from the planet," reported Lieutenant Commander James Park, the communications officer and son of Dr. James Park, who had helped decode the original message. "Multiple frequencies, very complex harmonic patterns." "Can you understand any of it?" Elena asked. "Some of it matches the patterns from the homeworld message, but there are new elements. The language seems to have evolved during their isolation." Behind them, Dr. Sarah Chen monitored the long-range sensors. "Captain, I'm detecting approximately 8,000 life signs in underwater cities around the planet. The colony is much smaller than we expected. Elena nodded grimly. The journey from Earth had taken longer than planned. They were arriving, with only 2 years to spare before the Devourer fleet would reach this system. Every day counted now. "Broadcast the message package," Elena ordered. They had spent months preparing for this moment. The message contained mathematical proofs to establish intelligence, followed by excerpts from the original Homeworld transmission to prove they had received it. Most importantly, it included the warning about the Devourers and humanity's offer of assistance. The response from the planet came within hours, and it shocked everyone aboard the human ships. The transmission began with mathematical confirmations, then shifted to emotional harmonic patterns that needed no translation. Even humans could recognize the sounds of shock, disbelief, and overwhelming grief. The SCI-FI had never received their homeworld's final message. For 4 years, they had been living normal lives, unaware that their parent civilization was dead. Dr. Lisa Martinez, who had led the translation team on Earth, worked frantically to decode the colony's responses. The first translated words from the aliens broke her heart. "Voices from the void, you bring news of currents turned to silence. Our home waters sing no more. Our spawn givers swim in the eternal deep. How can this be? How can the great ocean die?" The grief in the alien communication was universal and devastating. Elena had to wipe tears from her eyes as she listened to the translations. The SCI-FI morning songs that followed were hauntingly beautiful, even filtered through electronic systems. But the tragedy turned to amazement when the aliens fully understood what the humans were telling them. The small water world had visitors. From a distant star system, beings who had intercepted a message never meant for them and traveled impossible distances to help. "Swimmers from the far waters, your currents have carried you through the great void to warn us. You risk your own. Tides to save strangers, the harmony of your hearts echoes across all space." First contact became an exchange of wonders. The humans shared their technology, their art, and their reason for coming. The SCI-FI responded with their own marvels: cities that grew like coral reefs, biotechnology that shaped living creatures for specific purposes, and a philosophy that saw all existence as interconnected currents in a vast ocean. Elena took a shuttle down to the planet's surface, accompanied by Dr. Martinez and a small diplomatic team. The landing zone was a floating platform in the middle of one of the planet's vast oceans. As they descended through the atmosphere, Elena saw the true beauty of SCI-FI civilization. Underwater cities stretched for kilometers beneath the waves, their organic architecture glowing with bioluminescent lights. Gardens of alien seaweeds swayed in carefully managed currents. Schools of native fish, genetically modified to serve various functions, moved through the water like living tools. The first SCI-FI to meet them was an individual called Current Keeper, Flowing Wisdom. Elena had expected something like an earth dolphin, but the reality was far more beautiful. The SCI-FI stood nearly 2 meters tall, with elongated limbs that moved with fluid grace. Their skin was covered in patterns that shifted color with their emotions, and their large eyes held an intelligence that was immediately recognizable. "Welcome, swimmers from the distant star," Flowing Wisdom said through a translation device the humans had prepared. "Your arrival brings joy and sorrow in equal measure. Joy that we are not alone in our grief. Sorrow that such beauty as yours should risk itself for such small currents as ours." The formal first contact ceremony took place in the colony's central meeting area, a vast underwater amphitheater where thousands of SCI-FI gathered to see the alien visitors. Elena found herself swimming beside beings who had evolved in an entirely different ocean, under a different star, yet their capacity for wonder and gratitude was unmistakably familiar. As the days passed, both species learned about each other with growing amazement. The SCI-FI had mastered biotechnology to a degree that seemed like magic to human eyes. They could shape living organisms the way humans shaped metal and plastic. Their cities grew rather than being built, and their tools were living creatures. bred for specific purposes. In return, the humans shared their mechanical technology, their computers, and their weapons. The Kethai had no concept of warfare in the human sense. Their entire civilization was based on cooperation and harmony with their environment. "How do you fight?" asked Deep Singer Wavecaller, one of the colony's leaders. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Rodriguez, the mission's military advisor, struggled to explain. "We use tools that throw projectiles at high speed, or that release energy in controlled bursts. We have vehicles that can move quickly and weapons that can destroy large areas." The translation seemed to confuse the aliens. The concept of deliberately destroying things was foreign to their mindset. Dr. Martinez tried a different approach. "Imagine if the coral eaters that threaten your reefs were the size of your cities and could not be reasoned with. How would you protect your young?" This, the Kethai could understand. They had dealt with natural disasters and predators, though nothing on the scale of the devourers. The cultural exchange revealed fascinating differences and similarities. The Kethai had no concept of individual ownership in the human sense. Everything belonged to the community, and decisions were made through a complex process of harmonic consensus that could take days to complete. Their art was entirely musical and kinetic. They created beauty through movement and sound rather than visual representations. Their history was preserved in songs that could last for hours, with mathematical precision encoded in the harmonics. But their capacity for love and sacrifice was immediately recognizable to the humans. When Elena showed them pictures of Earth's children and families, the Kethai responded with their own images of spawn pools and teaching circles. The universal nature of parental care needed no translation. As the weeks passed, the two species worked together to prepare for the coming threat. The humans shared what they knew about devourer tactics from the homeworld's final transmission. The Kethai provided detailed information about their colonies and their limited defensive capabilities. The news was sobering. The three-colony worlds had minimal space-based infrastructure and no weapons capable of fighting the massive devourer ships. Their only advantages were their mobility in aquatic environments and their advanced biotechnology. "We cannot fight them in space," admitted Deep Current Reef Shaper, the colony's chief engineer. "Our vessels are designed for travel between worlds, not for war, but perhaps we can make ourselves harder to harvest." The Kethai plan was ingenious in its simplicity. They would use their biotechnology to create massive underwater cities that could move and hide. If they could not fight the devourers directly, they would make the planet appear lifeless when the enemy arrived. Elena realized that evacuation might not be the only option. "What if we combined our technologies, human weapons with Kethai mobility and camouflage?" The collaboration that followed produced innovations neither species could have achieved alone. Human fusion drives were integrated with Kethai bioships to create vessels that were part machine, part living organism. Kethai energy shields were strengthened with human particle physics. Most importantly, the aliens' natural ability to coordinate movements through harmonic communication was combined with human tactical doctrine. Dr. Chen made a discovery that changed everything. "Captain, the Kethai harmonic communication isn't just language. It's a form of quantum entanglement. They can coordinate movements across vast distances instantly. This meant that Kethai forces could act as a single organism, responding to threats and opportunities faster than any human military unit. Combined with human weapons and tactics, it created possibilities that neither species had imagined. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Young current swift swimmer, barely an adult by Kethai standards, approached Elena with an idea that would change the course of the war. "Elder swimmers, I have been listening to your war songs about the metal fish that throw fire. But what if the fire throwing was not from outside but from within?" The young Kethai had conceived of biological weapons that could be delivered directly to devourer ships. living organisms that could survive in space, infiltrate enemy vessels, and cause damage from inside their defenses. Elena stared at the young alien in amazement. "You're talking about turning your biotechnology into weapons." "I speak of defending life by using life itself," Swift Swimmer replied. "The devourers consume living worlds. Perhaps living weapons can consume them." The ethical implications were staggering. The SCI-FI were peaceful beings who had never created weapons of war. But faced with extinction, they were willing to transform their greatest strength into their defense. Work began immediately on what would later be called the Living Fleet. Human ships were paired with SCI-FI biovessels, creating hybrid craft that combined the best of both technologies. Weapon systems were integrated with living organisms that could repair damage, adapt to threats, and coordinate attacks through quantum harmonics. Most importantly, both species began to understand each other not just as allies, but as friends. Human crew members learned to appreciate the SCI-FI way of seeing all existence as interconnected currents. The aliens marveled at human individualism and the ability to make quick decisions without lengthy consensus building. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, one of the human pilots, found herself particularly close to a young SCI-FI engineer named Bright Current Coral Singer. Despite the language barriers and physical differences, they discovered a shared love of flying and a similar sense of humor that transcended species. "You humans think very fast," Coral Singer observed one day as they worked on integrating a fusion drive with a bioship. "Your thoughts move like storm currents. It is beautiful, but exhausting." Sarah laughed. "You SCI-FI think very deeply. Your thoughts move like deep ocean currents. It's calming, but sometimes frustrating when we need quick decisions." These personal connections became the foundation of the alliance. As humans and SCI-FI worked together, ate together, and faced danger together, the bonds between them grew, stronger than any formal treaty. But time was running short. Long-range sensors detected energy signatures at the edge of the system that matched the descriptions from the homeworld's final message. The Devourer fleet was approaching ahead of schedule. Elena called a joint meeting of human and SCI-FI leaders. "We have 18 months instead of 2 years. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now." The decision was unanimous. Rather than evacuating, both species would stand and fight. The SCI-FI colonies would become the testing ground for a new kind of warfare, a fusion of human aggression and alien harmony, mechanical precision, and biological adaptation. As the combined fleet prepared for battle, Elena found herself thinking about the message that had started it all. The dying SCI-FI of the homeworld had sent their final transmission into the void, trusting that someone would care enough to listen. Someone had listened. And now, as human and alien ships moved together through the water and space around SCI-FI, that trust was about to be tested in the crucible of war. The message that was never meant to be heard had become the foundation of an alliance that neither species could have imagined. Together they would face the darkness coming from the stars, and perhaps together they would find a way to turn that darkness back. The greatest test of both civilizations was about to begin. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace like a nightmare made real. Captain Elena Vasquez watched the main screen of the UES Harmony as massive crystalline ships, each the size of a city, materialized at the edge of the SCI-FI system. The enemy had arrived 3 months early, and they brought more ships than anyone had expected. "Sensor count confirms 73 vessels," reported Dr. Sarah Chen from the science station. "Energy signatures are off the charts. Each ship appears to be a living organism rather than a mechanical construct." Elena felt her stomach drop. The combined human SCI-FI fleet numbered only 15 ships. They were outnumbered nearly 5 to 1 by an enemy that had already destroyed one advanced civilization. "Captain, we're receiving harmonics from the SCI-FI fleet," announced Lieutenant Commander James Park. "They're broadcasting what Deep Current Reef Shaper calls a current song of unity. They want all ships to join the harmonic pattern." Elena nodded. Over the past 18 months, the human crews had learned to work with SCI-FI quantum harmonic communication. It allowed the entire fleet to coordinate movements with perfect precision, acting as a single organism rather than separate ships. All human vessels synchronize with the harmonic pattern. Activate bioship integration protocols. Around SCI-FI, the most unusual fleet in galactic history prepared for battle. Human ships merged with SCI-FI bio-vessels, creating hybrid craft that pulsed with bioluminescent energy. Living armor covered mechanical hulls. Biological weapons systems grew alongside traditional human armaments. The Devourer response was immediate and terrifying. The massive crystalline ships moved toward the planet with predatory grace, their surfaces rippling with energy that seemed to bend space itself around them. As they approached, smaller vessels detached from the main fleet like spores from a fungus. "They're deploying harvester units," Elena observed. "Just like the data from the homeworld described." The harvester ships began scanning the planet with energy beams that penetrated deep into the ocean. They were looking for signs of life to consume. But the SCI-FI had spent months preparing for this moment. "Initiate Camouflage Protocol 7, Elena ordered. Across the planet's surface, SCI-FI biocities began to change. Bioluminescent lights dimmed to nothing. Living structures contracted and hid beneath artificial rock formations. Entire populations of aliens moved into deep ocean trenches where the scanning beams could not reach them. To the Devourer sensors, SCI-FI appeared to be a dead world. The confusion among the enemy fleet was immediate. Harvester ships circled the planet repeatedly, their scanning beams finding nothing but empty water and lifeless rock. The massive command vessels held position, apparently waiting for their scouts to locate the civilization they knew should be there. "Now," Elena whispered. The attack began from every direction at once. Human SCI-FI hybrid ships erupted from hidden positions in asteroid fields, on the dark side of moons, and from the planet's deep ocean trenches. The harmonically coordinated assault hit the Devourer fleet at its most vulnerable moment, when they were spread out and focused on planetary scanning rather than defense. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, now piloting a fusion of her fighter craft and a SCI-FI bioship called Bright Current, led the first wave. Her ship moved through space with organic fluidity, its living hull adapting to energy weapons and its biological systems repairing damage faster than the Devourers could inflict it. "Multiple hits on Target 7, Sarah reported as her weapons. A combination of human particle cannons and SCI-FI bioenergy projectors tore through a harvester ship's crystalline armor. "The living weapons are working. They're adapting to their defenses. The bioweapons were the key innovation of the Human SCI-FI Alliance. Unlike mechanical weapons that fired the same way every time, these living projectiles could change their approach, learn from enemy countermeasures, and find new ways to penetrate defenses. But the Devourers adapted quickly. The massive command. Ships began targeting the hybrid vessels with focused energy beams that could vaporize a city block. Several human SCI-FI ships were destroyed in the opening minutes of battle. "We're losing ships faster than we can replace them," reported Colonel Marcus Rodriguez from the UES Defiance. "We need a new strategy." The answer came from an unexpected source. Young Current Swift Swimmer, the SCI-FI who had conceived the EAS bioweapons, was aboard one of the hybrid ships when it was critically damaged by Devourer fire. As the ship's systems failed, Swift Swimmer made a desperate decision. "All currents converge," the young alien broadcast on the harmonic network. "Living ship, carry my song to the deep waters of the enemy." Swift Swimmer merged completely with the damaged bioship, transforming it into something unprecedented. A living missile with a consciousness to guide it. The ship creature flew directly into the largest Devourer vessel, penetrating its defenses not through force but through biological infiltration. Once inside, Swift Swimmer's consciousness spread through the enemy ship's organic systems like a beneficial virus. The Devourer vessel began to turn against its own fleet, its weapons targeting other crystalline ships. "By all the depths," whispered Current Keeper, flowing wisdom from the planet's surface. "Swift Swimmer has become one with the enemy ship. The young one swims in hostile currents to protect us all." The sacrifice inspired both species. Across, the fleet human and Keth-High crews began attempting similar infiltration attacks. Ships that were too damaged to continue fighting became guided projectiles, their crews using escape pods while biocomponents attempted to infect enemy vessels. But the Devourers learned from each attack. Their later ships developed biological defenses that made infiltration nearly impossible. The battle was turning into a grinding war of attrition that the smaller fleet could not win. Elena realized they needed a decisive action. "All ships, form up for the Chen maneuver." The Chen maneuver was named after Dr. Sarah Chen, who had discovered that Devourer ships used their own momentum and energy against enemies. But that same momentum could be turned into a weakness if approached correctly. The entire human Keth-High fleet grouped together and accelerated directly toward the largest concentration of enemy ships. To the Devourers, it appeared to be a desperate suicide charge. They focused all their firepower on the approaching fleet, pouring energy into what should have been an easy target. At the last moment, the harmonic coordination allowed the Allied fleet to scatter in perfect synchronization. But instead of fleeing, they used the Devourer's own energy beams as a slingshot effect, redirecting the massive amounts of energy back at the enemy ships. The results were devastating. 3 Devourer command vessels were destroyed by their own redirected weapons. The massive crystalline structures, designed to project energy outward, could not handle the feedback when their beams were reflected back at them. "It's working!" shouted Lieutenant Park from the communications station. "They're vulnerable to their own weapons." But the victory came at a terrible cost. The maneuver required ships to pass dangerously close to enemy fire, and many human Keth-High vessels were destroyed in the process. The fleet that had started with 15 ships was down to 7. The remaining Devourer ships, now numbering about 40, began to regroup. Their tactics shifted from overwhelming force to patient siege. They surrounded Keth-Var at a distance, cutting off any possibility of escape while they developed new strategies to deal with the unexpected resistance. "They're going to wait us out," Elena realized. "They know we can't maintain this level of fighting indefinitely." The siege lasted for 3 weeks. During this time, both sides tried to gain advantage through innovation and adaptation. The Devourers developed new scanning techniques that could penetrate the Keth-High camouflage. The Allies created new bioweapons that could operate independently in space, but the breakthrough came from an unlikely source, the original message that had started everything. Dr. Martinez, working with Keth-High harmonic specialists, made a discovery about the quantum nature of their communication. "Captain, what if we could broadcast the homeworld's final message using the harmonic network, but amplified through our ship systems? What would that accomplish?" Elena asked. "The message contains the mathematical and emotional essence of Keth-High civilization. If we could project it with enough power, it might disrupt the Devourer's coordination. They're silicon-based life forms. They might be vulnerable to biological quantum patterns." It was a desperate idea with little scientific basis, but they were running out of options. The remaining fleet gathered around Keth-Var's largest moon, preparing for what would likely be their final battle. Elena stood on the bridge as the Devourer fleet began its final approach. 40 massive ships moved toward the planet with inexorable purpose, their crystalline hulls glowing with contained energy. "Begin harmonic broadcast," she ordered. The message that had never been meant for human ears now filled space around Keth-Var. But this time, it was not a desperate plea for help. It was a declaration of defiance. The mathematical beauty and emotional depth of Keth-High civilization, amplified by human technology and projected through bioship harmonic networks, created a wave of organized information that washed over the approaching fleet. The effect on the Devourers was immediate and unexpected. Their tight formation began to break apart as individual ships lost coordination with the fleet. The quantum harmonics that bound their collective intelligence together were disrupted by the alien patterns of thought and emotion. "Now!" Elena shouted. "All ships attack pattern swift swimmer!" The remaining 7 human Keth-High vessels charged the confused enemy fleet. Without their coordination, the Devourer ships were vulnerable in ways they had never experienced. Individual vessels were picked off by coordinated attacks that exploited gaps in their defenses. The battle that followed was brief but decisive. The bioweapons, no longer facing organized resistance, spread through the enemy fleet like a plague. Ships that had seemed invincible began turning against each other as their organic systems were compromised. Captain Elena Vasquez found herself leading a charge against the largest Devourer command ship. Her vessel, the Harmony, had been extensively modified with Keth-High biotechnology. As they approached the enemy vessel, she could feel the ship's living components responding to her emotions, growing stronger with her determination to protect the innocents below. "For swift swimmer," she whispered as the Harmony's biocannons tore through the crystalline armor of the command ship. "For the home world, for everyone who trusted the universe to care." The command ship's destruction sent cascading failures through the remaining Devourer fleet. Without their central coordination, the remaining vessels either fled the system or were destroyed by the relentless bioweapon infections. When the last enemy ship disappeared into hyperspace, Keth-Var was free. The victory celebration that followed brought together humans and Keth-High in ways that neither species had expected. In the underwater cities of the planet, human survivors swam alongside their alien allies, sharing stories of the battle and mourning their dead together. Elena found herself floating in a vast underwater chamber, surrounded by thousands of Keth-High, whose patterns of bioluminescence created a living light show of gratitude and joy. The ceremony was both alien and completely familiar, the universal expression of beings who had survived against impossible odds. "The current has carried us through the darkest deep," sang Current Keeper Flowing Wisdom. "The swimmers from distant waters have become part of our eternal flow. In all the vast ocean of space, we are no longer alone." Dr. Martinez, floating, nearby in her breathing gear, translated for the humans present. But translation was hardly necessary. The meaning was clear in the harmonic patterns that filled the water around them. As the celebrations continued, reports began arriving from the other Keth-High colonies. The victory at Keth-Var had accomplished more than just saving one world. The bioweapons had spread beyond the immediate battle, carried by fleeing Devourer ships to other parts of their fleet. The alien plague designed by peaceful beings was systematically destroying the galaxy's greatest threat. Within months, reports came from across the galaxy of Devourer fleets simply disappearing. The living weapons continued to adapt and spread, turning the Devourer's own biological nature against them. The message that was never meant to be heard had become the salvation not just of the Keth-High, but of countless other species across the galaxy. The mathematical harmonics and emotional patterns of a dying civilization had provided the key to defeating an enemy that had seemed invincible. But perhaps more importantly, the battle had proven something about the nature of intelligence and compassion in the universe. When beings chose to help strangers at great personal cost, when they combined their strengths to protect the innocent, when they turned love and sacrifice into weapons against darkness, the universe itself seemed to respond. Elena stood on the bridge of the Harmony, now permanently merged with its Keth-High biocomponents, and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other civilizations faced their own challenges and threats. And somewhere out there, the echo of the Keth-High message continued to spread, not just as a warning, but as a promise. In a vast and sometimes cruel galaxy, someone was always listening. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, they were willing to answer with everything they had. The defense of Keth Var was over, but the legacy of the message that was never meant to be heard would continue forever. A reminder that hope could travel faster than light, and that love could triumph over any darkness.
The bridge of the human vessel Defiance was quiet, except for the soft beeping of damaged systems. Captain Jack stood by the main viewport, his eyes fixed on the stars beyond. Less than 24 hours ago, those same stars had been filled with enemy ships now. An uneasy calm had settled across this sector of space. "Damage report," Jack called out, turning to face his crew. Officer Rex looked up from his station, dark circles under his eyes showing his exhaustion. Hull integrity at 68%, weapon systems at 45% capacity, main engines working but not at full power, life support stable. Jack nodded. It could have been worse. Much worse. When the Defiance had unexpectedly dropped out of hyperspace in the middle of what turned out to be Galactic Council territory, no one had expected a warm welcome. But no one had expected immediate attack either. "Any sign of them returning?" Jack asked. "Nothing on long-range scanners," said Tina, the ship's sensor specialist. "They seem to have pulled back to regroup." Jack walked to the center command chair and sat down heavily. His mind replayed the battle that had erupted when the alien fleet opened fire without warning or attempt at communication. The Defiance, though only one ship, had managed to hold its own. Earth's military technology, developed in isolation, had proven surprisingly effective against the Council's standardized weapons. "They'll be back," he said quietly. "And next time, they'll bring more ships." Across the galaxy, in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, chaos reigned. Representatives of 12 major alien species argued loudly, their voices echoing off the high ceiling. Admiral Krell, a tall green-skinned being from the verdant species, slammed his fist on the central table. His four eyes narrowed in anger as the room gradually fell silent. "One ship," he shouted. "One single human ship damaged 4 of our patrol vessels and killed 23 crew members. This cannot stand." Counselor Pell, an older member of the bird-like avi species, raised a feathered hand. "We attacked them first, Admiral. Perhaps they were simply defending themselves." "They were in restricted space," Krell shot back. "The quarantine of their sector has stood for 5,000 years. There are reasons their kind was isolated." From the shadows of the chamber, Intelligence Officer Tora watched the debate with interest. Unlike the others, she had spent the night searching the Council's oldest records. What she found disturbed her. Mentions of humans were surprisingly scarce for a species dangerous enough to warrant complete isolation from the galactic community. One ancient file, heavily encrypted, had caught her attention. It suggested the quarantine had been established not because humans were dangerous, but because they asked too many questions. Questions about the Council's authority. Questions about freedom. Tora slipped away from the chamber. She needed to dig deeper before sharing her findings. Back on the Defiance, the crew gathered in the meeting room. Maps and tactical displays covered the walls, showing their position relative to known space. "We have 3 options," Jack said, addressing the 25 humans who represented Earth's first deep space mission. "First, we try to run. The jump drive needs at least 48 hours to recharge, but we might find a place to hide until then." Engineer Sam shook his head. "With the damage we took, they'd track our emissions easily." "Second option," Jack continued, "we attempt communication. Try to explain that we meant no harm by entering their territory." Medical Officer Anna frowned. "They fired without sending a single message. They may not be interested in talking." "The third option," Jack said, his voice lower, "is to prepare for another fight." The room fell silent. They were explorers who had been forced to become warriors. Each person there knew that the Defiance, remarkable as it was, couldn't stand against an entire galactic force. "There might be a fourth option," said comm specialist Pete, who had been quietly working at a terminal. "I've been analyzing their communications during the battle. They use a standardized system across their fleet. I might be able to tap into their network. Jack raised an eyebrow. To do what? To listen, Pete replied. Find out what we're dealing with. Maybe find some leverage. Do it, Jack ordered. In the meantime, Sam, get repair teams working around the clock. Everyone else prepare for both diplomacy and defense. We represent all of humanity out here, and I won't let Earth become a target because of our actions. Admiral Krell stood, alone in his command ship, staring at holographic images of the human vessel. Its design was unlike anything in the Council database. Efficient, practical, deadly. His aide entered the room quietly. The Council has reached a decision, Admiral. And? They've authorized a full battle group, 5 capital ships, 20 support vessels. You're to eliminate the human threat before they can report back to their homeworld. Krell nodded in satisfaction. The quarantine must be maintained. Humans are unpredictable. The ancient records are clear on that point. There's something else, sir, the aide added. Intelligence Officer Tora has been accessing restricted files about Earth, files from before the quarantine. The Admiral's expression darkened. Find her, now. Tora moved quickly through the lower levels of the Council station. She had downloaded as many files as she could before her access was inevitably discovered. Now she needed to find a secure transmitter. The truth had to get out. Humans hadn't been quarantined for the safety of the galaxy. They had been isolated because they represented a different way of thinking, a challenge to the Council's absolute authority. Finding an unused communications bay, she quickly set up the equipment. She didn't know if the human ship would receive her transmission, but she had to try. To the Earth vessel, she began, speaking in the common galactic language. You are in grave danger. The Council has ordered your destruction. But there are those among us who question the old ways. The quarantine of your world was not what you have been told. She paused as a noise in the corridor caught her attention. Security forces were coming. She quickly finished her message and sent it, erasing all evidence of the transmission just as the door slid open. On the Defiance, Pete's eyes widened as an unexpected message came through his modified receiver. Captain, he called over the ship's comm. You need to see this now. Jack arrived moments later, joined by several other officers. They watched in silence as Tora's message played. According to these old records, the alien woman's voice continued. Humans were once part of the galactic community. Your adaptability, your creativity, your questioning nature, these were seen as threats by those in power. The Council didn't fear your violence. They feared your ideas. The message cut off abruptly. Can we track where this came from? Jack asked. Pete nodded. A station about 2 light years from here. Jack looked around at his crew, their faces showing a mix of confusion and determination. It seems, he said slowly, that we didn't start this war after all. We just reminded them of one they thought they'd finished long ago. He straightened his uniform. Change of plans. Set course for that station. If there are allies out there, we need to find them before Krell's forces find us. The Defiance turned silently in space, heading toward an uncertain rendezvous and a conflict far bigger than one ship could handle alone. Humanity's return to the stars had begun with a battle, but perhaps it would continue with an alliance. The war for the galaxy's future was just beginning. The Defiance moved quietly through the asteroid field, its damaged hull blending with the rocky surroundings. Captain Jack stood on the bridge, watching as they approached the coordinates from the mysterious transmission. Any signs of a trap? He asked, not taking his eyes off the main screen. Tina shook her head. Nothing on sensors, Captain. But this field messes with our readings. Could be hiding anything. Jack nodded. The decision to come here had been risky. The crew had voted. Most agreed they needed allies, but some worried they were flying straight into Council hands. There, pointed Rex. That large asteroid. It's hollow. As they drew closer, they could see what looked like an old mining station built into the massive rock. Metal doors, long unused, stood half open like a mouth waiting to swallow them. Scan for life signs, Jack ordered. I'm picking up several, Tina replied. Not human. different from what we saw on the council ships. They're waiting inside. Jack took a deep breath. Take us in, slow approach. Weapons on standby but not locked. Let's not start shooting unless we have to. The Defiance eased forward, sliding through the open doors into a vast, dark hangar. As the ship's lights swept the area, they revealed rusty mining equipment and several smaller ships parked in the shadows. Match their atmosphere and prepare the landing party, Jack said. Pete, Rex, Anna, you're with me. Everyone else stays alert. If things go wrong, don't wait for orders. Get the ship out safely. Inside the abandoned control room of the mining station, a group of aliens waited nervously. Their leader, Mira, paced back and forth. She was tall and slender with pale blue, skin that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Unlike the council forces, her people looked almost human-like, except for their color and the slight glow of their eyes. They're here, said one of her companions, looking at a monitor. Just one ship, as promised. Are you sure this is wise? Asked another. If the council discovers we've made contact with humans, the council has lied to us for generations. Mira cut him off. It's time we learned the truth. The door slid open and 4 humans entered cautiously. Mira noticed right away how similar they were to her own kind. More solid, different colored, but the same basic shape. The records were right. I am Captain Jack of the Earth vessel Defiance, said the lead human. We received your message. Mira stepped forward. I am Mira of the Solarians. The message you received was from our agent in the council, Tora. She risked everything to contact you. Where is she now? Jack asked. Mira's expression darkened. Captured. The council doesn't tolerate those who question. Admiral Krell watched with satisfaction as the prisoner was brought before him. Intelligence Officer Tora looked defiant despite her bruised face. You sent a message to the humans, he stated. It wasn't a question. They deserve to know the truth, she replied. Krell laughed, a harsh sound. The truth? That humans were once part of our community, that they were quarantined not for violence but for their annoying habit of questioning authority? He waved a dismissive hand. Ancient history. Not so ancient, Tora said quietly. The files show Earth was isolated only 5,000 years ago. A blink in galactic time, and they were already developing space travel then. Imagine what they might have become now. It doesn't matter, Krell snapped. They will be eliminated before they can cause trouble. My battle group leaves within the hour. He leaned close to her. And you will tell me who else knows about this. Who else helped you access those files? Tora smiled thinly. The Solarians helped me, and they've already contacted the humans. Krell's 4 eyes widened in alarm. He turned to his aide. Change of plans. Track that human ship. Now. Back at the mining station, Mira led the humans into a small meeting room where a holographic display showed maps of the galaxy. Our peoples share more than you know, she explained. The Solarians and humans are distant cousins, both evolved, from the same seeded species in different parts of the galaxy. Seeded? Anna asked, her medical curiosity engaged. The oldest races spread life across the stars, Mira said. But that's a story for another time. What matters now is that the Council fears both our peoples for the same reason. We don't blindly obey. Jack studied the star map. So where do we fit in? One damaged ship against an entire galactic government doesn't sound like good odds. We have a network of rebels, Mira explained. Small groups on many worlds who question Council rule. But we needed a spark, something to show resistance is possible. She looked Jack directly in the eyes. Your ship fighting off a Council patrol was that spark. News is spreading even though they try to control it. Rex frowned. So we're propaganda? Your hope, Mira corrected. And we have technology to share. Ways to repair your ship, improve your weapons. Before Jack could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. One of Mira's crew rushed in. Council drones, he shouted. They found us! The small automated attack drones swarmed into the asteroid field, scanning every rock. They were the first wave, scouts for the battle group that followed behind. Inside the mining station, panic erupted. Mira's rebels rushed to their ships while the humans ran back toward the Defiance. "We need more time," Sam shouted over the comm. "The new tech Mira gave us isn't integrated yet," Jack thought quickly. "Tina, what's the composition of these asteroids?" "Mostly iron and nickel," she replied. "Some have traces of radioactive elements." "Perfect," Jack said. "Sam, can you modify our sensor array to send out a pulse that would trigger those elements? Make them look like engine signatures?" Sam's voice perked up. "Give me 5 minutes." Jack turned to Mira, who had joined them on the run. "Get your people to the far side of the field. We're going to create a distraction." Admiral Krell watched impatiently as his drones searched the asteroid field. His battle group of 5 large warships waited at the edge, weapons charged. "Sir," called his sensor operator, "we're detecting multiple engine signatures throughout the field." "How many?" Krell demanded. "Dozens, sir. Possibly 100. It appears to be a major rebel fleet." Krell's eyes narrowed. "Impossible. Send half the drones to investigate, prepare the battle group to—" He never finished his sentence as a massive explosion ripped through the asteroid field. The humans had detonated charged particles in several asteroids, creating a chain reaction that destroyed most of the drones and disrupted the sensors of Krell's ships. In the confusion, the Defiance and 3 smaller Solarian vessels slipped away from the mining station, taking a hidden route through a dense dust cloud. On the bridge, Jack looked at Mira with new respect. "Your people fought well." Mira nodded. "As did yours." "The Council won't expect humans to adapt so quickly to space combat." "Where to now?" Jack asked. Mira's eyes gleamed with excitement. "There's an ancient station in the Forbidden Sector. The old records Tora found suggest it contains technology from before the Council took control. Technology that might help us fight back." Jack smiled. "Then that's where we're going. Looks like one human ship just found some friends in this galaxy after all." As the small rebel fleet jumped to light speed, news of their escape spread among hidden resistance groups across the stars. The war had only just begun, but for the first time in 5,000 years, the Council faced an enemy they didn't understand. Humanity was back. The small fleet of ships dropped out of hyperspace in a region of space that seemed darker than normal. Few stars shone here, and those that did appeared dim and distant. Captain Jack stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking at the main view screen with a mixture of awe and unease. "The Forbidden Sector," said Mira, who stood beside him. "No Council ships patrol here. They claim it's because of dangerous radiation, but the truth is, they fear what might be found." "And what exactly are we looking for?" Jack asked. Mira pointed to a faint shape in the distance. That, as they drew closer, the shape became clearer. A massive space station, its design unlike anything the humans had seen before. It wasn't the straight lines and efficient angles of Council architecture, nor was it like Earth's practical, functional designs. This was something else entirely. Curved, almost organic, as if it had grown rather than been built. "It's ancient," Mira explained. "Dating back to before the Council ruled the galaxy. The records Tora found suggest it was built by the same civilization that first brought humans into the galactic community." The ships approached cautiously. The station appeared, dead with no lights or signs of power. Its surface was scarred by what looked like weapons fire from long ago. "No energy readings," reported Tina from her sensor station. "If there's anything working in there, it's well shielded." Jack turned to Sam, who had been studying the station's design. "What do you think? Can we dock safely?" The engineer nodded, slowly. "Those look like docking ports along the lower section. Old design, but I think we can modify our airlocks to connect." "Do it," Jack ordered. Then he turned to Mira. "I want to know exactly what we're looking for in there." Mira's eyes gleamed in the dim light of the bridge. "Knowledge, power, and perhaps a way to defend Earth when the Council decides to break the quarantine and attack your homeworld." 3 hours later, a mixed team of humans and Solarians made their way through the dark corridors of the ancient station. Their flashlights created eerie shadows as they moved deeper into the structure. "The air is breathable," noted Anna, checking her handheld scanner. "Someone designed this place to last." Rex ran his hand along a wall. "These markings, they look like some form of writing." Mira nodded. "The language of the predecessors, those who came before all of us." They continued forward until they reached a vast circular chamber. In the center stood what appeared to be a control pedestal. Sam approached it cautiously. "This design, it's strange but somehow familiar, almost like it was made for human hands." "Or Solarian," added Mira, holding up her own hand, which did indeed look very similar to a human's despite her blue skin. Sam studied the pedestal more closely. I think it needs power." He opened his pack and pulled out a portable generator they had brought from the Defiance. With careful movements, he connected it to what seemed to be power inputs on the base of the pedestal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low hum, lights began to appear throughout the chamber. The pedestal itself glowed with a soft blue light, and symbols appeared on its surface. "Can anyone read this?" Jack asked, looking at the unfamiliar script. Before anyone could answer, the symbols shifted, changing form until they became recognizable as modern galactic standard language. "Welcome, descendants," a voice said from nowhere and everywhere at once. Adaptive translation complete. The team stepped back in surprise as a holographic figure appeared above the pedestal. It had a vaguely humanoid shape, but was composed of light patterns that constantly shifted and flowed. "I am Sentinel," the figure said, "guardian of knowledge and keeper of truths." Jack stepped forward. "I am Captain Jack of the Earth vessel Defiance." The hologram seemed to study him. "Earth, human. It has been 5,247 standard years since humans last accessed this facility." Mira gasped. "That matches the time frame of the quarantine." Sentinel turned its attention to her. "Solarian, genetic cousins to humans, both seeded from the same source material by the predecessors." "What happened here?" Jack asked. "Why was this station abandoned? Why were humans quarantined from the rest of the galaxy?" The hologram flickered slightly. "This station was a center for knowledge exchange between species. It was attacked by those who sought to control rather than share. As for humans..." The figure seemed to look directly at Jack. "Your kind was feared not for your weapons or aggression, but for your unpredictability, your ability to adapt, to find solutions others could not see." "The Council," Mira said bitterly. "Yes," confirmed Sentinel. "They established their rule by creating standardized systems for everything. Technology, governance, thought itself. Humans refused to conform. You asked questions. You found different paths. This made you dangerous to their order." Jack's expression hardened. "So they locked us away, kept us isolated from the rest of the galaxy." "They attempted to erase your existence from galactic history," Sentinel said, "but some remembered. Some preserved the truth." Sam, who had been examining the technology around them, spoke up. "Can you help us? The Council knows we've broken quarantine. They'll attack Earth soon." The hologram seemed to consider this. "This facility contains defensive technology that was once used to protect free worlds from Council aggression. It has lain dormant for millennia, but it can be reactivated." Hope surged through the team. Jack stepped closer to the hologram. "Where is this technology? How do we access it?" Sentinel's form expanded, and a holographic map of the galaxy appeared around them. A point of light pulsed in a sector not far from their current position. "There," the hologram said. "A shield generator capable of protecting an entire star system. It was hidden before the final assault on this station." "This could save Earth," Jack said, his voice filled with determination. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. Sentinel's form flickered more violently. "Warning. Council vessels detected entering the sector. Their numbers are significant." Jack turned to the others. "How did they find us?" Rex checked his scanner. "The power surge when we activated this place must have been detectable even through the radiation fields." Jack's mind raced. They were trapped in an ancient, mostly powerless, station with multiple Council warships closing in, but they also had the location of a weapon that could save Earth. "Sentinel," he said urgently, "can you download your data to our systems? We need everything you know about the shield generator and human history in the galaxy." The hologram nodded. "Initiating data transfer." Sam quickly connected their portable systems to the pedestal. "This will take a few minutes." "Minutes we may not have," said Mira, who was receiving reports from the ships they had left docked outside. "Admiral Krell himself is leading this attack. 5 capital ships and a full support fleet." Jack looked at the map still hovering in the air, showing the location of the shield generator. They had to reach it. Earth's survival depended on it. "We need a plan," he said, his voice steady despite the danger. "And I think I have one. It's risky, but if there's one thing the Council still doesn't understand about humans, it's how dangerous we can be when cornered." As the data transfer continued, Jack gathered the team to explain his idea. Outside, the Council ships moved into attack position, their weapons charging. The race to save Earth had become a desperate fight for survival. Alarms blared throughout the Defiance as the ship rocketed away from the ancient station. Behind them, the first shots from Admiral Krell's fleet slammed into the abandoned structure, tearing apart its outer sections. "Did everyone make it back? Aboard?" Jack asked, gripping the arms of his command chair as the ship shook. "All accounted for," Rex confirmed. "Mira and her team are on their ships. Data transfer from Sentinel completed at 97% before we had to disconnect." On the main screen, they could see the Council ships, 5 massive warships surrounded by smaller attack vessels. They were forming a blockade, cutting off the most direct route to the coordinates of the shield generator. "They want us to run," Jack said, understanding the enemy's strategy. "They're leaving a path open for us to flee, probably right into another ambush." Sam looked up from where he was analyzing the data they had downloaded. "Captain, I found something. According to these star charts, there's a wormhole junction about half a light year from here. It's a nexus point with paths to 7 different sectors." "Including the one where the shield generator is located?" Jack asked. Sam nodded. "Yes, but according to Sentinel's data, the Council strictly controls this junction. It's heavily guarded." Jack studied the tactical display, a plan forming in his mind. "What if we don't try to sneak through? What if we do something they would never expect?" "Like what?" Tina asked. "Like turn a wormhole into a weapon," Jack replied. Admiral Krell watched with narrowed eyes as the human ship and its Solarian allies changed course, heading away from his fleet, but not in the direction he had expected. "They're moving toward the Nexus Junction," his tactical officer reported. "Should we pursue?" "No," Krell said, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he thought. "They're heading into a trap. Commander Vex has 2 patrol groups stationed at the junction. Alert him that targets are incoming." His communications officer hesitated. "Sir, Commander Vex reports the junction is experiencing unusual gravitational fluctuations. 3 of the wormhole paths have become unstable." Krell frowned. "Natural phenomenon?" "Unknown, sir. It began shortly after the human ship left the ancient station." Something didn't feel right. Krell had studied what little the Council knew about humans. They were adaptable, unpredictable. "Set course for the junction," he ordered. "Maximum speed." The Nexus Junction came into view. A spectacular sight where space itself seemed to twist and bend. 7 massive wormholes arranged in a circle, each leading to a different sector of the galaxy. Around them floated Council defense platforms and patrol ships. On the bridge of the Defiance, Jack turned to Sam. "Are you ready?" The engineer nodded, though sweat beaded on his forehead. "It's untested technology, Captain. Based on the mining, techniques we use on Earth but scaled up significantly." "What exactly are we doing?" asked Mira through the communication link from her ship. "On Earth, we use controlled resonance waves to break apart rock formations when mining," Jack explained. "Sam believes we can modify our shield emitters to create similar waves that will affect the gravitational stability of the wormholes. You want to collapse the wormholes?" Mira asked, sounding shocked. "Not collapse them," Sam corrected. "Just disrupt them enough to create chaos. It's like throwing a stone into a pond. The ripples will affect everything nearby. Jack nodded. The Council ships have standardized shields calibrated for energy weapons and physical impacts. They won't be prepared for gravitational distortions. The plan was risky, but it was their only chance. They needed to break through to the shield generator coordinates, and this junction was the only way to get there quickly enough. Council, ships are hailing us, Rex reported. They're ordering us to power down and prepare to be boarded. Ignore them, Jack said. All ships move into position. Execute on my mark. The small fleet split up, each vessel taking position near a different wormhole entrance. The Council patrol ships began to move to intercept. Now, Jack ordered. The Defiance's modified shields activated, sending invisible waves of energy toward the nearest wormhole. The other Allied ships did the same. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then space itself began to tremble. Commander Vex watched in horror as his sensor displays went crazy. The wormholes were fluctuating wildly, their entrances expanding and contracting like beating hearts. What are they doing? He demanded. Stop them. His ships opened fire, but the gravitational distortions were already affecting their targeting systems. Most shots went wide, and those that did hit seemed to have minimal effect. Then the first patrol ship was caught in a gravitational wave. It spun helplessly, crashing into a defense platform. Both exploded in a ball of fire. It's working, Sam shouted over the noise of straining engines. The junction is destabilizing. On the main screen, they could see the Council forces in disarray. Ships tumbled out of control as the gravity waves rippled through the area. 2 of the wormholes had grown to twice their normal size, while others had shrunk almost to nothing. Alcimine, ships head for the Sector 7 passage, Jack ordered. That was the wormhole that would take them closest to the shield generator's coordinates. The Defiance led the way, diving toward one of the larger wormholes. Behind them, new alarms sounded. Admiral Krell's fleet has arrived, Tina reported. They're launching fighters. Jack gripped his chair tighter. How long until we can enter the wormhole? 30 seconds, replied the pilot. But in its unstable state, I can't guarantee a safe passage. We don't need guarantees, Jack said firmly. We need courage. At that moment, several Council fighters caught up to them, firing repeatedly at the Defiance's engines. Shields failing. Rex shouted. Divert all power to engines, Jack ordered. We need to reach that wormhole. The ship surged forward, trailing debris and venting plasma. The wormhole entrance loomed ahead, a swirling mass of energy that pulsed erratically. 10 seconds to entry, the pilot called out. A massive explosion rocked the ship as one of the enemy shots found its mark. The main lights failed, replaced by red emergency lighting. We've lost the port engine, Sam reported from engineering. We're drifting off course. Jack looked at the tactical display. Mira's ship was still intact, still on course for the wormhole, but the Defiance was falling behind, becoming an easy target for Krell's approaching fleet. Mira, Jack called over. The comm. You need to go through. Get to the shield generator. We'll hold them off as long as we can. No, came Mira's response. We go together or not at all. Before Jack could argue, a small Solarian craft piloted by one of Mira's crew shot forward, placing itself between the Defiance and the attacking fighters. This is Pilot Alex, came a calm voice. I'll buy you time. They watched in awe as the small craft executed a series of impossible maneuvers, drawing enemy fire and creating a path for the damaged Defiance. Get to your crash positions. Jack ordered his crew. We're going through. With its remaining engine blazing at full power, the human ship lurched toward the wormhole entrance. Behind them, Alex's ship erupted in flames as it rammed a Council fighter, taking out 3 more in the resulting explosion. The last thing Jack saw before the swirling energies of the wormhole engulfed them was Admiral Krell's flagship opening fire, its massive weapons tearing through the space they had just occupied. Then everything became a blur of light and sound as the small fleet of rebels plunged into the unknown, leaving chaos in their wake. Emerging from the wormhole was like being born again. The Defiance tumbled through space, systems flickering as the crew fought to regain control. 3 Solarian ships followed behind, their hulls scorched but intact. Damage report, Jack called, out wiping blood from a cut on his forehead. Rex checked his console. Life support stable, weapons at 30%. Engine 2 completely gone. Engine 1 at 60% capacity. Communications damaged but working. Where are we? Jack asked. Tina studied her readings. Exactly where we wanted to be. The shield generator coordinates are in this system, about half a light hour from our position. The crew let out a ragged cheer. They had made it through against impossible odds. Jack allowed himself a small smile before turning serious again. What about Krell? Any sign of pursuit? Not yet, replied Rex. The wormhole is still unstable. They'll have trouble following right away, but they will come. Jack nodded. Then we don't have much time. Let's find this weapon before they arrive. The small fleet limped toward a distant moon orbiting a gas giant. According to Sentinel's data, this was where the ancient shield generator had been hidden. As they drew closer, they could see the moon was little more than a barren rock, its surface pockmarked with craters. I'm not detecting any artificial structures, Tina reported, frowning at her console. It must be underground, Mira suggested through the comm link, or hidden by some technology we can't detect. Sam, who had been analyzing the data from Sentinel, spoke up. Wait, these coordinates aren't pointing to the moon itself. They're leading us to a specific point in its orbit. Understanding dawned on Jack's face. It's not on the moon. It's in orbit around it, cloaked somehow. He ordered the ships to adjust course, moving to the exact coordinates Sentinel had provided. For a few tense minutes, nothing happened. Then suddenly, Tina's console lit up with new readings. Something's there, she exclaimed. Some kind of energy field is reacting to our presence. Before them, space seemed to ripple and fold. Then, like a curtain being pulled aside, a massive structure appeared. It wasn't a weapon or shield generator as they had expected. It was a space station, but unlike any they had seen before. Its design was elegant, peaceful even, with sweeping curves and gleaming surfaces that reflected the distant sun. It's beautiful, Anna whispered. Jack studied the structure carefully. Any defenses? Weapon systems? Nothing obvious, replied Rex. In fact, I'm picking up an automated docking signal. It's inviting us in. Jack exchanged glances with his officers. It could be a trap, but they had come too far to turn back now. Take us in, he ordered, but stay alert. The inside of the station was even more impressive than its exterior. Wide corridors with high ceilings led to open chambers filled with what appeared to be gardens and fountains, though they had long since dried up. The air was stale but breathable. Jack led a mixed team of humans and Solarians through the station, following the directions provided by Sentinel's data. They eventually reached a central chamber where a large console stood covered in dust. This is it, Sam said, approaching the console. According to the data, this is the control center for the weapon. Carefully, he wiped away the dust and placed his hands on what appeared to be a control panel. The surface responded to his touch, lighting up with soft blue light. A holographic display appeared above the console, showing the galaxy in miniature. Points of light indicated thousands of worlds connected by lines representing trade routes and communication networks. I don't understand, Jack said, staring at the display. Where's the weapon? The shield technology? The hologram shifted, zooming in on their current location. A soft female voice spoke, similar to Sentinel's but somehow warmer. Welcome, seekers of truth. You have found not a weapon, but something far more powerful. This is the Harmony Array, created by the coalition of free worlds before the councils. Rise to power. Sam's eyes widened as he studied the data streaming across his device. It's a communication system, the most powerful ever built. It can broadcast to every world in the galaxy simultaneously, bypassing all council communication controls. Jack looked confused. But Sentinel said it was a defensive system that could protect Earth. Knowledge is the ultimate defense, the voice replied. The Council's power comes from control of information. They isolate worlds like Earth to prevent ideas from spreading. This array was built to ensure truth could never be silenced. Mira stepped forward, her eyes shining. That's why they feared humans. Not because you were violent, but because you shared ideas freely. Because you questioned everything. And that's why they quarantined Earth, Jack said slowly, understanding, dawning. They didn't want our questions spreading to other worlds. Sam was already working at the console. There's more here. Historical records, data about every world in the galaxy, including Earth. The true history of the Council's rise to power. Can we use it? Jack asked. Can we actually broadcast to the entire galaxy? Sam nodded. The system is operational. It just needs to be activated. A new alarm sounded from their communication devices. Captain, came Tina's voice from the Defiance. Council ships have emerged from the wormhole. They've found us. Admiral Krell's fleet is on approach. Weapons. Hot. Jack looked at the holographic display, at the countless worlds that had lived under Council rule for millennia. Worlds that had forgotten there was another way to live. How long until they reach us? He asked. 20 minutes at most, Tina replied. Jack turned to his team. Then we have 20 minutes to change the galaxy. Sam, get this array online. Mira, gather every piece of evidence about Earth's quarantine and the Council's lies. We're going to tell everyone the truth. Admiral Krell stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as they approached the now visible ancient station. Target their engines and communication systems, he ordered. I want that human ship disabled, not destroyed. They must not be allowed to reach Earth with what they've learned. His tactical officer hesitated. Sir, we're detecting an unusual energy buildup from the station. It appears to be some kind of transmission. Krell's four eyes widened in alarm. Jam it, now. We can't, the officer replied, panic in his voice. It's using frequencies and methods we've never seen before. It's bypassing all our communication blocks. On the station, Jack stood before a simple recording device. Behind him, Sam worked furiously to keep the broadcast running while Council jamming attempts bounced harmlessly off the ancient technology. People of the galaxy, Jack began, his voice calm and clear. My name is Captain Jack of the Earthship Defiance. You may have heard that a human vessel attacked Council forces without provocation. That is a lie. He gestured to the historical records displayed beside him. The truth is that humans were once part of the galactic community. We were quarantined 5,000 years ago, not because we were dangerous, but because we asked questions the Council didn't want answered. As he spoke, the broadcast reached world after world. On thousands of planets, normal Council transmissions were interrupted. In homes, workplaces, and public squares, beings of all species watched and listened as a human told them about freedom they had forgotten. The Council doesn't protect you, Jack continued. It controls you. It standardizes your technology, your governance, even your thoughts. It isolates any species that dares to be different. He held up the data crystal containing Sentinel's historical records. We have proof. Earth was not the first world to be quarantined, and unless something changes, it won't be the last. Outside, Krell's ships had arrived, surrounding the station. Their weapons powered up, ready to fire. We may not survive the next few minutes, Jack said, his voice unwavering. But our message will. The truth cannot be quarantined. Freedom of thought cannot be standardized. The Council's time is ending. On countless worlds, something long dormant began to stir. Questions were asked. Records were examined. Old tales of a time before the Council suddenly seemed less like legends and more like history. As the first shots from Krell's fleet struck the station, Jack looked at his crew and their Solarian allies. Despite the danger, he saw no fear in their eyes, only determination. We did it, Mira said softly. The revolution has begun. Jack nodded. And whatever happens next, Earth will not stand alone. The station shook as more weapons fire hit it, but the broadcast continued, spreading across the stars like a wildfire of truth. On some worlds, beings were already taking to the streets. On others, leaders were questioning orders from the Council, for the first time in memory. The war that had started with one human ship was no longer just about survival. It had become something much greater, a fight for the freedom of an entire galaxy. And somewhere in the darkness of space, a small, Fleet was already plotting a course to Earth, carrying allies and hope for the battles yet to come.